It is with a very warm heart that we welcome you to today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuluko, and with me on today's episode is Christina Pius.
Hello, viewers.
On today's episode of the program, we will be talking about duty, about obligations, our duty to our community, our duty to our dear country, Nigeria. And in doing that, we will be sharing with you a news item that we came across recently with regard to the discovery of shale oil in the United States of America, which is said to have led to a steady decline in Nigeria's crude oil exports to that country. Of course, we know that the U.S. is the biggest importer of crude oil from Nigeria, just as we know that crude accounts for 90% of Nigeria's total export earnings, making it the mainstay of the Nigerian economy. A report released by the Chancery Associates, Energy and Maritime Consultants, says that the evolution of shale oil has caused Nigeria's oil exports to the U.S. to decline from about 1 million barrels per day in December 2009 to less than 352,000 barrels per day in February 2013, a loss of 70% of the U.S. market. Needless to say that this has led to a huge reduction in government revenue, which will have a negative effect on the economy. The Honorable Federal Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Desiani Alisimadueke, in a presentation at the Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference 2013, said pretty much the same, and we quote her, "I must say that the world is now becoming more competitive. The U.S. shale oil is already affecting our oil exports to the U.S., bearing in mind that the U.S. is one of our major trade partners in this sector," unquote. Add to this the massive oil theft, the illegal bunkering, and pipeline vandalism, and you see an endangered sector that cannot be relied upon for too long to sustain the Nigerian economy. This calls for a diversification of the nation's revenue base. Agriculture comes to mind here. Manufacturing comes to mind. But most importantly, taxes. Nigeria must follow the footsteps of other countries that have made taxes the base of their economy. Norway readily comes to mind here. Norway has one of the largest reserves of crude oil. Yet, Norway does not spend a dime of the proceeds from oil exports. Rather, the economy is run on taxes. It is said that Norway has said that their oil money is for generations unborn, that their oil money is for their grandchildren. That is what Nigeria must do. And that is what the Federal Inland Revenue Service is striving hard to make possible in Nigeria. The Individual and Enterprises Income Tax Department of the FRS had two major stakeholders sensitization events in July. One on Wednesday, July 3rd, and the other on Wednesday, the 10th of July. Both stories will come to you shortly. But before we go into them, this drama piece.
Madam.
How now?
Welcome, ma'am.
I tell you. How today? Good afternoon. I beg you, quick give me another motor like that.
What's it up to do what you first buy now?
Hey, I don't understand you. Now so traffic for all our roads too. Eh? Now some motors that they drive bumper to bumper. Then they hit each other from back. They don't break my motor real light.
But madam, and I be this now 1,050 naira.
1,050 naira. Which I buy one for here now?
You know, say that time I be not the hard about it. Now just small money clap on top. 50 naira, 5%.
Now wow. Oh yeah, bring them, my customer they wait for me. No. Give me. I know Kukuma know what the government they take all this money then they do say.
Madam, now the question what be expect from you.
Now.
Make you talk through. Now how many of us they remit a party? You Kukuma say when more and more people join in hand so they do the correct thing. Now that time you go get a mouth to ask the government. When they take this money, they do self.
Not true, customer. I think I go. My they wait for me, eh? Bye, Oga.
There you are. Christina, over to you.
On Wednesday, 3rd of July 2013, the Federal Inland Revenue Service collaborated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to host representatives of diplomatic nations in Nigeria, with a view to getting the cooperation of the missions in deducting relevant taxes at source. To underscore the importance of the exercise, the acting executive chairman of the FIRS, Alhaji Kabiru Mashi, was personally in attendance.
It is a known fact that taxation is very crucial to the development of any nation. Thus, it is expected that every citizen, in fulfilling of his or her civic responsibilities, should contribute his or her fair share of tax honestly, no matter how small, allowing the principle of equity and fairness. The Federal Revenue Service and the Joint Tax Board, while discharging these primary duties, observed an administrative tax gap, especially as it had to do with the local staff and other non-diplomatic staff of the embassies and other international organizations and agencies. After due consultation, it was resolved that this sensitization program should be organized to look at all contentious issues with a view to coming up with a memorandum of understanding that will guide collaborative efforts going forward to promote good tax culture and transparency in the administration of the provisions of the Personal Income Tax Act.
The coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister for Finance was represented by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Danladi Kimfashi, while the Minister for Foreign Affairs was represented by the Permanent Secretary, Ambassador Martins Uhumobi. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs threw its full weight behind the workshop while acknowledging the giant strides already made by the European Union delegation to Nigeria with regards to the deduction of relevant taxes.
This is a matter that is very dear to our heart because the diplomatic community needed some explanation, needed to know how to proceed on this matter. And when we go out of our country, one of the privileges that we enjoy as diplomats is in relation to payment of taxes. And we don't pay taxes. The General Convention, as part of the diplomatic privileges and immunities, guarantees us tax-free services. I want to also commend the good understanding and goodwill expressed by the diplomatic community towards this initiative. And that is testified this morning by the considerable number of diplomats that are here to attend this program, most especially the European Union, that has set the pace by facilitating the remittance of the pay-as-you-earn of its local staff since 2012. I want to applaud the EU.
While acknowledging the status of diplomatic missions in matters of taxation, Mr. P.A. Olayemi, Director, Individual and Enterprises Income Tax Department of the FIRS, had this to say.
We all know the importance of taxation to the development of any economy. We are equally very much aware that, members of the diplomatic corps don't have obligation to pay taxes in Nigeria. But the main focus of this sensitization program is the fact that, we need their support in order to promote, good tax-paying culture and, promote what I will call good governance. That is why we are seeking the support and cooperation of the members of the diplomatic corps to assist in, deducting and remitting the payroll taxes of their local staff.
Papers were presented on pay-as-you-earn, value-added tax, withholding tax, and taxpayer identification number. After which the tax officials and diplomats in attendance exchanged ideas on the way forward. From both sides of the divide, these words. After this, what next?
Discussion is a continuous exercise. We will eventually try to still reach out to all of them. Some have actually started, like the European Union, they have started deduction and remittance since 2012. And we will now be reaching out to other embassies and encourage them to also register. And that is even the purpose of this a committee that will now fashion out that MOU. So once the MOU is eventually, put in place, it will become very easy for all the stakeholders to know what is expected of them and how to move forward.
A transparent system, and it's a situation whereby anybody can go online and find whatever information you need about any corporation, any business, any individual in terms of their tax history and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And on Wednesday, 10th of July 2013, the Individual and Enterprises Income Tax Department of the FIRS was at it again. This time with a workshop for professionals on the rights, roles, and obligations towards an improved tax compliance culture. The acting executive chairman of the FIRS was represented at the event by Mr ASC, Director Tax Policy and Legislation at the FIRS and President CITN.
As part of our compliance strategy, we have decided to engage you, the professionals, in dialogue. Fortunately, all our professional bodies have ethical codes of conduct that are fantastic on paper. I hope we will live up to those ethics in our day-to-day lives, dealings, and businesses. For the group of taxpayers that have chosen to remain non-compliant, FIRS have decided to engage with your professional bodies who will collaborate with these professional bodies to sanction taxpayers in such categories. I trust that we will have your cooperation as stakeholders, not just in the tax system, but our economy and national life in general, and that together we can build the Nigeria of our dreams and leave a legacy for generations yet unborn.
And you may ask, why the workshop?
Who or which groups of people did you invite to this workshop?
Lawyers, accountants, the Charter Institute of Taxation members, surveyors, architects, quantity estate management agents, all professionals, called professionals.
If we may ask, why?
Well, these are people, and by their own rights, they have been trained by their profession, they are guided by their own professional ethics in their work, and they go between FIRS and the taxpayers in most cases. Mm-hmm. They are intermediary. Yeah. They are people that we cannot do without. Mm-hmm. And we observe that these are people we should partner with, first and foremost, for them to fulfill their own responsibility as taxpayer, and also be in a better position if they are well informed to guide the other taxpayers by way of advisory services to them.
We wonder exactly why you have decided to zero in on professionals for this workshop.
Yeah, thank you very much. Reviewing our database and the experiences of most of our tax offices, we realize that the professionals are not, fully compliant. And the approach of the present administration is that let us discuss with you, let us engage with you before we now use the big stick. And I think the message that we are passing through this sensitization program is to let the professionals know the provisions of the law. What does the law expect of them? And, we are now telling them that, we expect nothing less, because taxation is about law, and we will very much expect them to fully comply with the provisions of the law.
2 major papers were presented, after which the interactive session began in earnest. Mr. Dick Erie, sums up the proceedings in these words.
Have you listened to those professionals? What would you think are their challenges, and how are you, that is the FRS, how are you planning to address those challenges?
Okay, we observed two things. One, we observed that there are issues of lack of knowledge in part of how some of the laws operate. Then we also observe the knowledge gap in the terms of their application of the law, what rates are applicable for withholding tax, how does VAT operate, and the rest. So to us, this is an area that this workshop has thrown up.
Now what do be this? Make it say where you? The thing where you said me too much, calculation is where okay.
Madam, me correct now. Now the price be that.
You are playing with fire, so go. Me, I know say they never start fast for picking things. Oh, you want to play me, why you? You want to teach me a bit?
Madam, now everything with the add back on top. Now so with the seller.
Madam, you dey correct o.
Good day, madam. Any problem? Problem there.
The thing be say una not supposed to charge VAT for baby items and other things wey dey for VAT exemption list.
Sam.
Chai! This one na wayo receipt o. Correct receipt suppose contain the things wey you buy and the VAT wey dey on top. Then other items wey not get VAT, you go put them separately.
Madam, I apologize, You go change that.
Change that. You say we don't know what the government is around.
To pay VAT dey compulsory. Now government they use to make our life jolly, to collect and pay sharply to government. Is they correct?
FIRS, it pays to pay your tax.
Welcome back. It's time for our interview segment, and today we want to bring you the concluding part of the interview with Mr ASC Amawhe, Director, Internal Affairs Department at the FIRS. You may be wondering, after the two stories we just told you, how the FIRS ensures that taxpayers' money, that tax collections are kept safe. They call it risk management at the FIRS. Mr. Amawhe, welcome back. What do you mean when you talk about risk management in tax administration?
Okay, for everything we do, for every human endeavor, where you have a goal and objective, there must be the understanding that the risk of failure is there. Not to talk of tax administration where money is involved. The risk that we will not be able to collect what government has asked us to collect is very high. And so we are conscious of the fact that everything we do in the tax administration arena has risks associated with it. Be it the risk of assessment, are we assessing adequately? The risk of collection, are we collecting optimally? The risk of agents paying what they have collected on our behalf? The risk of the banks collecting and remitting timely? The risk is everywhere. The risk that the staff may not work optimally for whatever reason. So in understanding that we have risks, if you like, mines on the way to tax administration, we need to sit down and articulate these risk areas and begin to actually grade the risk. There are the very, very high risk, the medium risk, and the very low one. We normally use a traffic light to demonstrate risk. Mm-hmm. You have the red for danger. This is where the risk is highest. You need to focus and manage that area properly. There's the amber where not too serious, but serious enough to cause damage. And then you have the green where there's nothing to worry about, but don't lose track of the fact that you need to monitor. So we know that risk surrounds us. The risk of, especially when we're collecting cash, check, the risk of people willing you and doing away with the money, the risk of the bank collecting, going under, for example. A few years ago, we had the threat of some banks going under. Indeed, in the early 90s, where we had the first bank crisis, some banks actually went under with a lot of collection. So the risk is there. The question we ask ourselves, how can we mitigate the risk? How can we, in the midst of this risk surrounding us,
give the assurance that taxpayers' monies are saved. And indeed, government can rely on what we are doing to develop this country. Okay, so that actually advised the need to establish a risk management framework. For example, we have a risk profiling template where you key in data from audited accounts that are filed. Okay? But I ask myself, these audited accounts that we are keying into the template, are they correct in the first instance? I've seen a situation where a taxpayer reports 15 million, for example, when he should be reporting 300 million. What will that template do for me? So, for me, the risk here is not in the audited accounts. The risk is in establishing, in the first instance, whether the returns are right. So how do I do that? I go to industry analysis. I look at what, if you take a supermarket, for example, like a busy supermarket, I can go there pretending to be a buyer, and I'll see traffic over 1 week, 2 weeks, and I'll compare and see what I'm seeing in the returns. I go to a petrol station and I notice that the traffic coming in every week, they have a tanker of fuel, 33,000 liters, worth about 3.5 million. And I know that every week he gets at least one tanker. In a year, he gets 55 trucks, multiplied by 3.5 million. What do you get? And I look at the returns, I'm seeing 10 million, and I'll say, hey, it doesn't tie.
Kerosene, diesel.
So for me, it goes beyond the risk profiling template in the office. What I look at is the risks that adequate returns are not being filed. So I need to deal with that. I need to have interface talking about partnership with stakeholders. I need to go to an NPC and say, can you give me a report of all your distribution for January to maybe December last year, 2 years ago?
So you do all this.
And I use that to form an idea of what I should be expecting from manufacturing, from supermarket business, from shopping plaza, from petrol stations, from manufacturing.
So you do such independent analysis?
Yes, we do that to be able to ensure that we are getting risk management right.
Since your organization got into that consciousness of identifying risks and putting measures in place to manage them, what would you say is the biggest risk that the FRS faces? In the last 2 years, let's just look at 2011 to 2013. Yes. Where would you say you could say this is red? The banks or the ministries or the taxpayer?
Yes, I would say, for example, that the red is more with the agents who collect money. A lot of them collect and they don't remit. In fact, there are people who have appointed themselves agents. Talk about value-added tax. They collect and they don't remit. And they weren't even asked to collect. So for me, the red light is actually on agents that collect. I just told you that we did a small pilot audit of MDAs, and what is coming out is huge, even for just 70 MDAs, let alone when you now
go down to the local governments,
extend it to states and local governments, and indeed cover all the MDAs. That is why we're saying that MDAs going forward should not have the option of paying money. In fact, they have no right, no option, because there's no human intervention in there.
No role to play there.
The thing is swept. CBN is sitting on their capital accounts. The thing will just go. Airlines, once somebody has bought a ticket and has boarded, the tax element is swept. No wonder we created government business and tax offices. So with what we are doing with automation and the creation of structure, government business tax office, I can assure you that red light will be reduced to maybe A little amber or green at the end of the day.
Green will be where we like to go.
Yes,
but I must tell you that I feel safe. I'm a taxpayer and I'm a citizen of this country. And so what you do at the FRS concerns all of us because the money ultimately comes back to us. Okay. Your money is safe. We want to thank you most sincerely for coming on to the program. We hope that when next we call on you, you will oblige us with your wealth of knowledge.
More years all the time.
Please join us next week, same station, same day of the week, same time of the day. Have a good week ahead.